Strictly Sports. I am Jacob Brown. Today we're going to do our Tampa Bay Rays 2020 season preview. I'm joined here with Stephen Cash, and this is his team. We've finally gotten to this point. We're doing his Rays today, my Yankees tomorrow. But we want to make it clear we're totally honest about our teams, and we're not those homer fans that just say our teams are amazing just to say that they're amazing. So completely honest opinions here. But we're going to do it how we always do it: additions, subtractions, lineup, bench, rotation, bullpen, prospects, and there's a lot of positives here for this Tampa Bay Rays roster. So they lost a lot of guys, and this is kind of how they roll. This is what the Rays do. They lost Emilio Pagan and Tommy Pham in a trade with the Padres that acquired them Hunter Renfroe and Manuel Margot. They traded away Matt Liberatore to the St. Louis Cardinals in exchange for DH and first baseman Jose Martinez and outfielder Randy Arozarena. They let Avisail Garcia walk in free agency to the Brewers. They let Guillermo Heredia walk. Matt Duffy left. Travis d'Arnaud left to the Braves. Eric Sogard to the Brewers. Jose De Leon to the Reds. And Jesus Aguilar to the Marlins. Who else did they add? They added Cal Stevenson in a trade with the Astros. And then on minor league deals, the Rays added Aaron Loop, Dylan Covey, and Sean Gilmartin. And then they also signed Yoshitomo Tsutsugo to a contract from Japan. So when you look at this lineup, this is a team, Steven. This is the only team I've looked at so far. It's really them and the Reds that have two pretty distinct lineups against right-handed pitchers and against left-handed pitchers. So against righties, I have Brandon Lau leading off and playing second base. In 82 games last year, had 17 home runs with a 354 WOBA. Then I have Yandy Diaz in the two-hole, 79 games, 14 home runs. Then Austin Meadows, this is their superstar, 24 years old in the three-hole playing left field, 33 home runs, 89 RBIs with a 380 WOBA. Then Ji-Man Choi, the first baseman cleaning up, plays 127 games, 19 home runs last year. Then Hunter Renfroe, this is where it gets interesting. I have him batting fifth and playing right field. Originally, I had Jose Martinez playing right field full time. When I actually looked at the stats, even though Renfroe struggles against righties in comparison to lefties, Jose Martinez is actually worse against righties than Hunter Renfroe is. So I have Renfroe pretty much full-time playing right field. He had 33 bombs and 64 RBIs in 140 games. That's the weirdest home run to RBI ratio I've seen. Usually at 33 home runs, you're in that 80, 90 RBI mark. So that's definitely weird. Then Yoshitomo Tsutsugo doesn't have any big league stats, but I have him DHing and batting sixth. Then Adames hitting seventh, Zanino in the 8-hole, and then a platoon of Kiermaier and Margot in center field batting ninth. And then, like I mentioned, different lineups against lefties. Against lefties, I would have Jose Martinez play first base instead of Choi against lefties because Martinez mashes against lefties. And then I would have Renfroe cleaning up instead of batting fifth. And that would really be the only place I changed. And then obviously with the Margot and Kiermaier platoon as well. So, Steven, you know better than anyone. You're a Rays fan. What do you think with this lineup?
It's a typical Rays lineup. You look at the subtractions every year, and it's just, unfortunately, that's just the way this team is built. They're just like the A's. They have the same philosophy. You're playing that Moneyball style game where, as a fan, you want them to stay every year, but you just got to be real. Like, being a Rays fan, you just like, that's just the reality of how their budget works. They shift guys in. They work off trades and get kind of the same kind of player in return. So they did get Hunter Renfroe. I liked Margot a lot, and Martinez, guys that you won't see a big drop-off necessarily with Garcia and Pham, who I liked a whole lot, got on base a ton, hit the ball hard. Really a great hustle player and will be around. I think he's a guy who the league will be one to reckon with for a while. But this lineup, it's typical of the last 4 years we've seen with Kevin Cash, where he likes matchups. He likes to do lefty righty, and that's where it's intriguing to see, Choi and Martinez, how they're going to dice up the lineup at night in, night out, because he really likes to tool it around a lot. But with this lineup, if you get Brandon Lau healthy for the whole year, he missed some considerable time last year. Yandy Diaz also had the injury bug a whole lot last year. Meadows, had a great start to the season. Struggle a little bit towards the middle. It comes with getting full major league reps. And then I look at G. Manchoy, Renfroe, Tsugo, Adames, even Kiermaier. This team on paper, it looks like, well, you're going to win 96 games again. But I will see a drop off just because you have guys that didn't play a full slate of games last year, and that's my biggest concern with this team. Is you lost guys that played a full slate last year, and now you're transitioning into guys that are young, can do it at the big league level, but it's just a different animal when you're playing 120 to 140, even potentially 160 if you are healthy the whole year. But I like what they did. They kept a core together that made that run last year against the Astros, losing in Game 5. The pitching staff really carries this team, but that'll be in a few minutes. But I just think, for me, if they can get Zunino going, who I like Michael Perez, the backup catcher, to be in that starting spot.
Oh, okay.
But that's another guy. He's been up and down. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes there, why he hasn't been the guy. He's shown he can be a good hitter, and he has a great game behind the dish. But there's some question marks surrounding this lineup 1 through 9. If they all can stay healthy and produce the way they did last year, they'll be in great shape and be in the mix again. But it's just keeping those guys like Lau and Diaz healthy, and how are they going to produce the same way at a full 140 game slate?
Yeah, I mean, they're basically asking Renfroe, Tsutsugo, Martinez, and Margot to replace Tommy Pham, Avisail Garcia, Heredia, Sogard, Aguilar, d'Arnaud. And do those additions and subtractions weigh each other out? I think they do, because the Rays always get maximum value out of their players. I look at a player like Hunter Renfroe, perfect example. They could eventually get to a situation where they only do play Renfroe against lefties, because with the Rays, you could, if you wanted to, Brandon Lau can play left field too. So you could put Lau in left field, Meadows in right, and then put Joey Wendell at second base if you want Wendell in that lineup with that contact over Renfroe. Because against righties, Renfroe has an 88 weighted run created plus, 304 WOBA. That's not good, and he hits 208 versus righties. You don't want that in your lineup on an everyday basis. But against lefties, 364 WOBA, 127 weighted run created plus. That's a huge difference. So definitely he's going to be in there cleaning up against left-handed pitchers. But I really could see the Rays saying, you know what, to get that liability out of the lineup, we'll throw Lau out into left field, Wendell at second base, Meadows in right. And you look at that versatility. Tsutsugo, he can play left and third. Meadows can play all 3 outfield positions. Yandy Diaz can play third base and first base. Jose Martinez can play first base and right field. So the beauty of this Rays roster, they're versatile.
Yeah, and I was reading a great MLB article on each team last night, and who is best suited for a 162 type season. And one of the top 2 teams was the one MLB analyst said, the Rays, because they have that versatility. They can mix guys in and out of positions. They can roll guys out and not have to have that. They don't have to play 140 games and really be the guys. I look at a team like your Yankees too. They're like, you want to see an Aaron Judge out there every single night. You want to see Brett Gardner out there every night. I mean, Stanton, it's great. It's a great thing to have. But sometimes you want to give them some rest. But it comes with being in a big market, and you want to win as many games as possible, and you want them out there. But you look at this Rays team. I've seen it the last 3 years, and they do a good job in rotating these guys out and keeping them fresh enough to when they get to the last stretch of the season, they are in good shape. But I think if you, like I said, hammered it home before, if you keep them healthy, people are saying, well, you could win 100 games. You're on that 4-window trend of you win 68 wins, 80 wins, 90, 96. Do they win 100 games? Of course not. They're not a 100-win team. There's too many teams in front of them, like the Yankees, that you're not going to overleap them. It's just not possible. It's not liable. So I have them in the 90-win range, mix again, but that's just if that hitting and that production can stay there like it was in the previous 2 years.
And I look at it too, this team might be the deepest team in the minor league level. These guys aren't top 100 prospects, but they're really amazing at production. They have Michael Brasso at the minor league level, 26 years old last year, 16 home runs, 60 RBIs with a 406 WOBA at AAA. That's crazy. And then when he was in the big leagues, 6 home runs, 16 RBIs in 51 games was above big league average. He's a guy that can play third base, second base. So if Yandy Diaz has injury problems again, the first guy you call up is Michael Brasso. Then they have Nate Lowe in the minor league level. 24 years old, 50 games in the big leagues, 7 homers, 19 ribbies, 328 WOBA. In the minor leagues, 93 games, 16 home runs, 63 RBIs, 404 WOBA. So he's a guy, if Choi struggles, because let's face it, G-Man Choi before last year, he was kind of a minor league player, right? I mean, he kind of came out of nowhere. Same thing with Yandy Diaz. So maybe Nate Lowe is a guy later in the year. He's your starting first baseman. They have Randy Arozarena that they got in the St. Louis trade in the minor leagues last year. 432 WOBA, 151 weighted run created plus at 25 years old with 12 home runs in 64 games. So they have 3 guys to me in that minor league level. Man, if now the problem is that they're not going to be in the big leagues because they're too backed up at the bench level. They have to keep Martinez. They have to have Wendell. They have to have Margot and Kiermaier, and they have to have a backup catcher. So that makes 4 for that bench, which is why Brasso and Lowe have to be in the minor leagues. But like I said, Diaz, Choi, some guys like that, if they struggle, those guys are in the big leagues.
Yeah, for sure, and that's kind of the theme was last year. They had a really big problem. Not problem, was it was a good thing to have because they brought guys like Mike Brossow and Nate Lau. I felt bad for them because they were going back and forth constantly between the AAA level and the big leagues. But that's just because you were so backed up and you had guys like Choi and Diaz playing well, and there was just no room for them to play on a daily basis. And you've got guys on the bench right now, like I said, Margot and Wendell. Michael Perez, the backup catcher, if he catches fire, then he's going to take Zanino's spot. So you need those bench guys that you know can do it. But one of them slips, like G-Man Choi, he has an off year. I mean, he doesn't produce like he did last year, and there's no saying he will produce the same way he did last year with 19 homers, and 63 RBIs. You have that backup in that AAA level where you can call him up at a moment's notice and be there. So I like the depth. They've done a good job in keeping that core in the AAA level as well. So when guys leave town on bigger contracts, they have guys to lean on for the future.
So let's move on to that rotation, and this is another super strength of this team. I don't know about you, Steven. I would say that even though Morton had a better year, I think that the Rays would want Blake Snell to be their opening day starter. That's just their dude. So he's 27 years old. He had a Cy Young in 2018. In that year, he had a 1.89 ERA with 0.80 home runs per 9. So 2018 was incredible, but he took a step back in 2019. In 23 games started, 107 innings, 4.29 ERA, but his FIP was almost a run lower at 3.32. That's something to really look at. 12.36 Ks per 9, 3.36 walks. But he's a guy, Snell, and we'll get to a bigger conversation in a second. But his 2017 was a 4.04. So who is he? Is he a 4 ERA guy, or is he Cy Young Blake Snell? We got to find out this year. Then you have Charlie Morton. This is the final year of his career. He announced when he signed this 2-year deal with the Rays that second year would be it for him, and he's going to retire. So 36 years old last year, 33 games started, 194 and 2/3 innings, 3.05 ERA, 2.81 FIP, 11 strikeouts per 9, 2.64 walks per 9, and a .69 home runs per 9. So you basically have 2 potential aces at the top of that staff, and you might even have 3 potential aces with Tyler Glasnow. In 12 games started, he came over in the Chris Archer trade, 60 and 2/3 innings, 1.78 ERA with 11.27 Ks per 9. He throws like 100 miles per hour as a starter. I love him in that 3 spot. Then they have Yanni Chirinos in that 4, 3.85 ERA. I love Yanni Chirinos, hard sinker ball pitcher. He scares me every time the Yankees got to face him. And then they have Ryan Yarborough in that 5 spot. He was a guy they used as an opener a lot. 28 games, 14 games started, 141 and 2/3 innings, 4.13 ERA. And then they've got like 3 or 4 other guys. If they have injuries, they could put them in the rotation as well, like a Jalen Beeks, Brett Honeywell, who's been injured for a full year, Brendan McKay, who's a number 15 MLB prospect. So when you look at this rotation, Steven, same thing with that lineup. They've got strengths, but they also have depth as well.
Yeah, this is like, to me, this is the most exciting aspect of this team. This is why I wanted this season to get going, because I think it's one of the best rotations of baseball, right behind the Yankees. And so at my top four rotations, the Yankees, Rays, Mets, Nats. Those four teams have the best pitching, and that's going to win you games. That's what gets you to, playoff aspirations. But I look at the top three of the Rays that they have. Blake Snell, I want him to be our number one guy just because you have that youth. He's a lefty. You don't see many lefty number one guys in the league anymore. Then you can back him up with Charlie Morton and Glasnow. Three guys really last year that just really dominated and bought into the whole pitching staff. And Glasnow only 12 games started. Unfortunately, was hurt throughout the whole year. And I think maybe the division race changes a little bit if he's healthy. Who knows? We can't in hindsight, it's always 2020, but with the 1-2-3 punch right there, I mean, it's one of the better ones in baseball, and they got to stay healthy. And is Charlie Morton going to come out and be the same guy he was last year and be really dominant and give you 7-8 innings quality starts every fifth day? We don't know. But Yanni Chirinos, another guy who bought into and really critiqued his stuff. I like his sinker. He went in through a one-hitter against the Red Sox middle of the season. And it was impressive in itself. He made a big jump in maturity too, and really finding his way in the big leagues. And Ryan Yarbrough, he was kind of one of the pioneers of the opener last season. I mean, it started blowing up. He was like the guy if we didn't have a guy going, because they were so hurt that rotation was banged up, and they called on him to be the guy. But the depth there too with Brendan McKay, and I don't know what the Rays are going to do with Brett Honeywell. The injuries have been mounting year in and year out. It seems like he never get there. He's never healthy. So the depth is there for that fifth spot, and I think they will continue to use the opener as we see more and more teams using that philosophy. But they do have some depth pieces, and they can use them in their fifth spot. And Yarbrough can even be a bridge guy in the bullpen. And I saw that last year against the Astros. So a lot of good things in this pitching staff, and we'll see how they fare this year.
Yeah, I'm with you. It will be interesting to see what they do with Honeywell, number 91 MLB prospect. He used to be a lot higher, though. He just barely has pitched. So many injuries for him. And then Brendan McKay. It's going to be really interesting to see what they do with him, because in limited time, 5.14 ERA, but his FIP was 4.03 in 49 innings, and his strikeouts per nine were 10.29. So maybe he's a guy they say maybe we can, utilize him in the bullpen, maximize his value, because he can also hit, because he hit one big league home run last year. He was actually he came up through the minor leagues as a first baseman. So it's pretty crazy to see him now transition into the number 15 MLB prospect as a pitcher. So I think it's kind of easier as a bullpen guy to balance those two things between hitting and pitching. So maybe that's a guy that contributes. We mentioned Jalen Beeks, and then that moves into this bullpen. They acquired Trevor Richards from Miami last year, 135 and a third last year, 4.06 ERA. He's a dude. He might be the fifth starter. They have Nick Anderson in that bullpen. I don't know who their closer is, Steven, but I do know that he's one of the candidates. Nick Anderson, 3.35 ERA, 15.23 Ks per nine. That's probably why. They also have Diego Castillo in that bullpen, 10.6 Ks per nine. Jose Alvarado, 11.7 Ks per nine. Colin Poche, 12.5 Ks per nine. Chaz Rowe, 11.5. And then Oliver Drake, 11.2. So everyone in that Rays bullpen, they strike people out.
Yeah, and I'm going to give a quick, kudos to Rob Snyder, their pitching coach. He was their AAA Durham Bulls head coach for a few years there before we got the hire at the big league level. But I don't know where they find all these bullpen guys from, but that goes hand in hand with the coaching, and he made these guys who they are today. And Chaz Rowe struggled mightily last year. I thought he was going to be a guy who was going to get cut and put on waivers, and something switched for him, and he found his game. But this bullpen's deep enough too, where they can throw out multiple guys in different situations. Now with this new rule in Major League Baseball, the three batter rule, the dynamic for this team will change a little bit because Kevin Cash likes to use that matchup lefty righty or lefty lefty righty righty and so forth. I think Nick Anderson will be the closer. He has that stuff to be a shutdown guy. But I like what they did. They kept the core together in the bullpen. Some guys will get another year under their belt and some good things. Starting pitching and bullpen go hand in hand, and I like what they're doing there.
I mean, how big of a loss is Emilio Pagan, though? He was in that Tommy Pham Margot trade. What do you think about that, no Pagan?
Yeah, that hurts. When I saw that trade, I kind of shook my head. I was like, you got Margot in return, but Pagan ate up a whole lot of innings. He was a guy who I love him in the Padres organization because he's a guy who comes out and says you can't beat me. Good luck trying to hit my stuff, and just complete dominance out there for the most part, and just his fastball was almost unhittable and had a good slider with it. You're gonna see a kind of a dip off there. It hurts their bullpen depth. I thought him and Nick Anderson at 8-9 closing a game would be just almost unstoppable. But now you're going to really have to get over that hump. It's going to hurt, but hopefully they find someone that can take over that role, and maybe Anderson can, fulfill that and find your setup guy potentially this year at some point.
Yeah, I think a 7-8-9 probably will end up being Castillo, Alvarado, and Anderson. That's probably what it's going to be. But they do like using Castillo in multiple inning roles, so maybe they don't want to pencil him into just a seventh inning. So you're right. It will be interesting. But I look at these ERAs too, and you could probably speak to this as well. These ERAs for some of these bullpen guys, yeah, they're a little bit high, right? Castillo 3.4 for bullpen guys. It's a little high, I should say. 4.06 for Richards, 4.06 Rowe, 4.70 for Poche, 4.80 for Alvarado. I think the main reason for that, they're just overworked, and sometimes they have bad outings, and it skews those ERAs. That's kind of why I was focusing on those strikeout numbers, because that's really what you're going to get on an outing-to-outing basis. You're going to get a ton of strikeouts from these guys.
Yeah, exactly. You hit it around the head. Is they do the one issue I have with the Rays' philosophy is using the bullpen guys way too much, and that's where I hit home with other teams is don't tax your bullpen early, and they use these guys so early on in the season where they get down to later portion of the season or the middle stretch of the season, and you're getting beat up, you're giving up more runs, and that's kind of where the ERAs are kind of skewed. They did give up a lot of runs towards that middle part of the season, but they were helped out with the fact that their lineup could score a lot of runs and save them there. We saw them really thrive towards this September-October playoff run where they were really lights out and unfortunately losing Game 5 to the Astros, but they really critiqued their stuff and for face value you'd say, well, the ERAs are high, but the strikeout numbers they really honed in on limiting base runners and really focusing on the task at hand and getting the job done and striking guys out.
So let's move on to these prospects, and this is another area that they thrive in. I mean, we mentioned those minor league guys, Brasso and Lowe. They had incredible minor league numbers. They're not even in the top 100. So you look at this top 100, what could even be in there? Well, they have the number one prospect in baseball, shortstop Wander Franco. He's 19 years old at single A plus last year, 396 WOBA in 62 games. With 3 home runs, 24 RBIs, and then he had 6 homers, 29 RBIs at single A. So there's single A plus and there's single A. So basically combined 9 homers, around 60 RBIs as a 19-year-old. So crazy. I mean, that's crazy as a 19-year-old. But we have them ranked number 3 in baseball as a minor league system. That's a 52 APR with a 120 TPRP. That's a really high TPRP. That means all these players, you add them up, that's up to 120 because the top 10 prospects, 50 points. Top 20 is a little bit lower than that, and so on and so forth. So then they have number 15 prospect, like we mentioned, Brendan McKay. He'll contribute this year. They have number 45 prospect infielder Vidal Brujan, 22 years old. Seems like more of a contact hitter. 4 homers in 90-ish games in the minors last year. But his WOBA was really high at 345. They have infielder, 20 years old, number 72 prospect Xavier Edwards. Then this makes the Chris Archer trade even worse for the Pirates. The Rays also acquired 90 prospect right-handed pitcher Shane Baz, 20 years old, 2.99 ERA, and 81 and a third. And we mentioned the Pirates don't have anything coming in the pitching ranks in their minor league system. That's just depressing if you're a Pirates fan. And then Honeywell in that 91 ranking. So you look at this prospects ranking for the Rays, they're not going anywhere in the next 4, 5, 6 years.
Yeah, it's every year that's the one bright spot of not having a whole lot of money that this organization doesn't have. They do have the prospects, they have the assets, and whether it's trading certain guys away for big league ready players for 2 3 years, that's what they do. What they did with the Archer trade, they got rid of a guy at the right time. You got Glassdown Meadows, who are going to be on the team for 2 3 years, and you got Shane Baz, who's going to be up and ready in a couple, maybe a year or two. So you never know, and just guys that are just keep cycling in. It's like almost an endless cycle for this team, and how they keep doing it year in year out, I don't know. The scouts have done a great job in finding these prospects. Wander Franco, I think, is going to be a guy who's going to be a lifelong Ray. Potentially, they're going to want to keep that guy. He's going to be a generational player the way he's going, I think. Bias aside, do I think he can translate? We don't know. He's only been down at that single A level. But you look at Vidal Bruin, and Xavier Edwards, two infielders that you can groom to be your guys when Adames and Wendell leave town. But I like the whole dynamic of the organization. It's frustrating not being able to spend money like certain teams are to try to win a World Series, but that's just the nature of the game. And until they buy in doing that, they're just going to keep doing what they do and grooming their prospects up and just trying to piece guys together.
So what would you give them for the offseason, Steven, and where do you have them in the division?
Off-season wise, I give them it's tough for me to say. I would say a B minus, just because you lost a lot of key guys in that run from last season. And yeah, you did get Hunter Renfroe and Margot, guys who can replace Garcia and Pham, but you did lose a key piece in Pagan in the bullpen. You lost Pham, who was he loved playing in Tampa with the guys and that team. I think he really galvanized that team together in that run. You lost Sogard and Aguilar. So some key losses there. In terms of finishing, I don't see them leapfrogging the Yankees. It's just too much. It's too big of a task at hand. Like I said before we got on, they lost 12 of 19 to New York last year. A key stretch there where they just couldn't beat them. And that just goes, the Yankees have more talent than they do. They just have more at their disposal. It'll be closer this year, I think, but at the end of the day, the Rays finish second place behind the Yankees.
Yeah, I'm with you. They'll be in second place. I think they will definitely make the playoffs. We'll get to that more so in the AL playoff video. And yeah, for the offseason, I would give them a B minus, just because we don't know what the additions are going to do yet. But it has the potential to be, like always, an A offseason. Because if those players do pan out and they do end up working out, that's an A offseason, because you're adding a power bat in Renfroe, a platoon guy with Kiermaier, a lefty masher in Jose Martinez. So you're potentially adding, and Tsutsugo too. You could be really having a great offseason here. And that'll do it for this Tampa Bay Rays 2020 season preview. You can listen to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and a bunch of other platforms. You can hear our New York Yankees podcast coming out tomorrow, the AL playoff pod the day after that. For Stephen Cashin, I am Jacob Brown. You can follow us on Twitter at StrickSportsFAU, and we will see you next time.